I'm so happy that very nice we could have the opportunity to speak to you.
The new Silk Road becomes the world sandwich.
Yes, I'm going to give this to you.
Yeah. Yes. Hello, how are you?
Very well. And yourself?
I'm well. I made it was an interesting 48 hours for me, but nevertheless, they got through. Yeah.
I would like to say that on behalf of the Schiller Institute, I'm so honored that Dr. Shamalia invited us to have a dialogue with Your Excellency Minister Khan, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. And I want to just give a 1-minute introduction to Helga. This is Helga Zepp-LaRouche. She founded the Schiller Institute in 1984, and she has been the international chairman. She was married to the late American economist and statesman Lyndon LaRouche, who died at the age of 96 in 2019. And since the 1970s, they have led an international campaign for creating a new just world economic order. Then in the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, they proposed to build a Eurasian land bridge across Eurasia, which they also called the New Silk Road. And the principle is peace through economic development. And this principle is embedded in Helga's 10 principles for a new international security and development architecture, which was her response to the crisis that we're facing right now, the world crisis with escalating war and the consequences. So I give the word to you, sure. Minister Khan.
Okay, thank you. So, I'm actually just going to perhaps, because we have the time that we have and we have a series of guests waiting. So I really want to be here to be able to exchange and let this be an interactive session. And anything that you would particularly like me to touch upon, whether it's the, the regional situation, whether it's how we from what is called the rest, which is not the West, look at what's happening in the West, because we do have a view on what's happening. So I was just at the ECFR and I was made to, I was asked this question about, what will Pakistan choose? How will you see yourself? And he said, how did we end up with a world in which sovereign countries are asked, which side are you on? We are on our own side. We don't have to pick a side. We've already picked a side. Our side is the Pakistan side, right? And sometimes our interests or our value system is going to be, aligned with what one country is trying to project in the world or do in the world, and sometimes it will be with another country, and sometimes it will be one country, sort of one set of countries, and sometimes the other. But the whole the whole thing, which in some ways threatens us right now, is that in the last many decades, post 1945, I think we were all told in the developing world that we are part of a global village, and whether your companies are ready for it or not, free trade is the way to go. Open up your markets. Free flow of people, information, investment, and all of that. And suddenly we told, no, now we need to build the fences. And some of them are good investments and some are bad, and some trade is good and some is bad. So it seems quite dichotomous and a little bit, I don't want to use the words that come to my mind. So that's where we are. And the other thing that I think we have to respect is that each one of us, each country, and this is what is supposed to enrich the multilateral fora, has its own lessons that we've learned from how some decisions have been taken in the world, right? Now, the two interventions, especially the two interventions, one in Afghanistan, which was in our backyard, and it has been 40 years of one intervention or the other, or one play or the other. Those have been very costly. But the world's attention moves away, the cameras move away, but the chaos from those interventions remains, and the impact and the repercussions, and currently the push factors which are being celebrated, because I was at Doha, at the Doha Forum, that the Security Council, Secretary General had called on Afghanistan. And many countries were celebrating over there. No, we have not failed. We have held on to sanctions, and we have made sure that the banking channels are not working. And we have made sure that they don't have access to the reserve. So I said, well, that's quite like strangulation of an economy. And if we've come to a point where we're celebrating that girls who cannot go to school can also not be fed, is that our, answer to a regime that we don't agree with? And many of us don't. So that's where we are. When it comes to a country like Pakistan, at best a middle power country, we have many challenges, such as to feed our children, such as to educate them, such as to develop them, such as to make sure that our GDP per capita increases. And in the midst of all of those challenges, we have the overhanging, not challenge, but catastrophic events led by climate change. You have also, COVID, which exposed to all of us that we can't secure ourselves within our borders. Borders don't hold when you have pandemics and when you have climate change. And what we do cannot have an impact on how the impact of those catastrophic events are going to be on us. No matter, even if we go completely green today, we will still be at the receiving end. So it feels rather sad and a little bit immature to think that at this time, when the world should be getting together and saying, okay, what do we do at an international level in terms of regulation for artificial intelligence, regulation and encouragement for climate change, and for any next big event that we might be facing. We are very, very busy right now trying to divide the world further and further into pieces. That's my 2 minutes.
Well, first, let me express my happiness to be able to speak with you. I have heard a lot about you, and I think that, it's a very good occasion. I mean, I'm extremely worried about the danger of world war, which is very immediate. And, the danger that the combination of the escalation of the Ukraine crisis and the effort to establish global NATO is, really increasing the tension in the world to a point where world war is quite possible. That's one big subject, but I don't want to only focus on that, because at the same time, I think we have an incredible potential, because the non-aligned movement, which was more or less out of action after the, you should know that my late husband, Lyndon LaRouche, developed the idea of an international development bank in 1976. And we discussed that with all the countries of the non-aligned movement, which adopted practically that proposal at their Colombo conference in Sri Lanka in 76. And at that time, it did not function, despite the fact that the vast majority of the world wanted to have a new world economic order, because, the powers to be destabilized, all the countries participating. Indira Gandhi was destabilized, Mrs. Bandaranaike was gotten out of office. I know that Ali Bhutto was also having a very tragic history. And so for a long time, this non-aligned movement was not really a factor in the world. But I think in the recent years, mainly, because of the Belt and Road Initiative and the fact that now there is a potential of real development. For example, in Pakistan, it's the CPEC, the China Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is one expression of that, just one example. But there is right now a complete revival of the non-aligned movement, and the spirit of Bandung, the idea that it is possible to end colonialism once and for all, is back. And I think that there is a tremendous potential in that, because if you only look at the world from the standpoint of the global north, sure, and the conflict with Russia and China, it almost looks very hopeless, because if the world falls into totally separate blocks, I agree with Dr. Mahathir from Malaysia, that embodies the danger of World War III as well. So I think that the global south, the countries of the global south, who represent the vast majority of the human species, and who are right now in an upbeat mood, as you can see by the fact that 30 members have applied to be members of the BRICS, for example. I think the Global South has to have a much stronger voice because, as President Sukarno and President Nehru said in Bandung, if it comes to a world war, it will affect the Global South as much as the Global North. And, people may die a little bit later, but they will die as well. So I think that gives the Global South the absolute right to speak out and make their voice heard. And that's why I have proposed this new global security and development architecture with a very concrete proposal of 10 principles, which, I know now the time is too short, but I would like to bring to your attention because I think that is something which urgently needs to be put in the discussion because, at the verge of World War III and at the verge of, the danger of a financial collapse of the financial system of the Atlantic world, it is really the question, are we as the only creative species existing on that we know of, are we capable to give us an order which allows the survival of all nations and the development of all nations? So this is, what I think.
No, absolutely. Could not agree with you more. And I think this gets reflected everywhere. I mean, I was at the European Council of Foreign Relations just yesterday. And it was quite funny because I spoke what I thought was just common logic, base logic. And everybody came to me and said, it was so refreshing to hear your perspective. I thought it was very unrefreshing. It should have been the most common of. So, as you were speaking, I was writing what I'm going to write an article on. The South is the new North. Okay. So in some ways, we are reminding the world of the lessons that we were taught, which we cannot unlearn now. Right. And in some ways, we cannot run into or waltz happily into conflict. So I look at it as competition changing into confrontation, then perhaps converting into conflict. And the other C that we keep on seeing missing is cooperation, which is completely out. It's almost like you cannot cooperate as a world, that we're dividing into two separate species. So I think what I will do is that I will take, I will read your the 10 principles. And I think it would be really worth a while to try and absorb it and also put it in our thinking and in our formulation and introduce it to the Foreign Office also. So, and then of course there is the new Silk Road becomes the world land bridge. So let's keep in touch. And what we can potentially look at is, for instance, maybe a lecture with our Foreign Service Academy so that we are able to take this wider. You think that makes sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We thank you so much for giving us time to present our views and to have a dialogue. And I want to present you with the reports that we made. This is the new Silk Road becomes the world land bridge from 2014. And then 2017, we made a volume 2. And then we made a special report extending the new Silk Road to West Asia and Africa, a vision of economic renaissance.
Okay, excellent. No, this is really, really useful. By Hassan Askari. Okay, familiar. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And this will be, good reading material for us. And I'm sure we'll be able to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Helga.
Bye-bye. Have a good trip.
Yeah, thank you.